It wasn't the string of late nights at the office or the sudden hushed phone calls he'd started taking on the terrace. It wasn't even the faint, unfamiliar scent of jasmine that sometimes clung to his suit jacket. For Isadora Sterling Wolfe, the breaking point was quieter, yet infinitely more violent. It was a single perfect smear of crimson lipstick on the crisp white collar of her husband's shirt. Not a smudge, not a mistake, but a deliberate, almost artistic mark of betrayal. In the sterile silence of their Manhattan penthouse, that silent kiss screamed louder than any confession, and it was the only evidence she needed to burn their billion-dollar empire to the ground. The penthouse felt like a gilded cage suspended 80 floors above Manhattan. From this vantage point, the city was a silent, glittering tapestry, its chaos and noise rendered beautiful and distant. It was a perfect metaphor for Isadora's life. For the past 3 years, she had been Mrs. Callum Wolfe, wife to the enigmatic, ruthless, and devastatingly handsome CEO of Wolfe Corp Global. Theirs was a modern fairy tale, spun on the looms of Wall Street and splashed across the pages of Vogue and Forbes. He was the self-made titan with a predator's instinct for business. She was the art historian with a quiet grace that seemed to soothe his restless energy. Now, at 7 months pregnant with their first child, a son, Isadora felt the gilded bars of the cage pressing in. The pregnancy had been a joyous surprise, a promise of something real and tangible in a world built on stock prices and public perception. Callum had been ecstatic, his usual guarded demeanor melting away whenever he placed a hand on her swelling abdomen. He'd whisper promises to their unborn son, promises of legacy, of power, of a world he would lay at his feet. But lately, a subtle chill had crept into their pristine, climate-controlled world. The late nights became more frequent, attributed to a hostile takeover bid from a rival conglomerate, Sterling Nash. The hushed phone calls were explained away as frantic dealings with international board members. Isadora, wanting to be the supportive wife, had accepted it all. She trusted Callum. Trust was the bedrock of their relationship, a foundation she believed to be as solid as the granite bedrock of the city below. Tonight was different. He'd come in just after 2 a.m., moving with a practiced quietness designed not to wake her. But she was awake. Pregnancy-induced insomnia had become her unwelcome companion. She lay still, listening to the soft clicks and rustles of him undressing in their expansive walk-in closet. The air was thick with an unspoken tension she couldn't quite name. When he finally slipped into bed, the cool air from the hallway followed him. He didn't reach for her as he usually did. He simply lay on his back, his breathing unnervingly, even for a man supposedly exhausted from a 16-hour workday. "Tough night," she murmured into the darkness, her voice a little thick with sleep. He startled a barely perceptible tensing of his muscles. "Isadora, I thought you were asleep." "Yeah." It was brutal. "Sterling Nash is playing dirty." "You'll beat them." "You always do," she said, her faith in him a reflex. "Always," he echoed, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. Sleep refused to claim her. An hour later, she slipped out of bed, the silk of her nightgown cool against her skin. A strange compulsion led her not to the kitchen for water, but to the walk-in closet. The space was a monument to their wealth, rows of bespoke suits, shelves of gleaming shoes, drawers lined with cashmere and silk. Callum's clothes from the day were in a heap on the valet chair, a rare sign of his fatigue. She picked up his Pima cotton shirt, the one she'd bought him from a small boutique on Jermyn Street in London. Her intention was simply to put it in the laundry hamper. And then she saw it. Under the harsh, recessed lighting of the closet, it was unmistakable. On the stiff, pristine white collar, just below the jawline, was a smear of lipstick. It was a deep, velvety crimson, the color of defiance and secrets. It wasn't a smudge from a clumsy hug. It was precise. A kiss. The kind a woman leaves as a message, a brand. Isadora's breath hitched. The entire sprawling penthouse with its panoramic views and museum-quality art seemed to shrink until all that existed was that single, damning stain. It was a violation, a desecration of their home, their bed, their marriage. Her first instinct was not to cry. It was not to storm into the bedroom and scream. A chilling, almost supernatural calm washed over her. The love, the trust, the carefully constructed fairy tale. It all shattered in that instant, collapsing into a pile of glittering, sharp-edged dust. She saw her future not with tears, but with a terrifying clarity. She would not be the weeping, humiliated wife. She would not beg for details. She would not allow him the satisfaction of a dramatic confrontation. His betrayal did not deserve her tears. It deserved consequences. She carefully folded the shirt, placing it on a clean countertop. She walked back into the bedroom and looked at him. Callum Wolfe, the man she loved, the father of her child. Asleep, he looked younger, the harsh lines of his face softened. A wave of nausea, sharp and acidic, rose in her throat. It wasn't morning sickness. It was disgust. Moving with the silent grace of a shadow, she went to her office, a sleek, minimalist room overlooking the East River. She sat at her desk, the cool chrome of the chair, a stark contrast to the fire in her veins. She pulled out a single sheet of her personalized stationery, its weight heavy in her hand. Her mind was a whirlwind of calculations, not of love lost, but of assets, prenuptial clauses, and escape routes. Their prenup was ironclad, negotiated by the sharpest legal minds in the country. There was an infidelity clause, punitive and severe, designed to protect her dignity as much as her finances. Callum had called it a mere formality, a vulgar necessity of their station. She now saw it as her declaration of independence. Her hand did not shake as she picked up her phone. She scrolled through her contacts past her mother, past her friends, until she found the name she needed. Eleonora Vance, known in the elite circles of New York as the Lioness of Litigation, Eleonora was the most feared divorce attorney in the state. She was a woman who did not negotiate. She dictated terms. She had handled the divorces of rock stars, senators, and 2 of Callum's own board members. Hiring Eleonora wasn't just filing for divorce. It was declaring war. It was a.m. Isadora didn't care. She pressed the call button. The phone rang twice before a crisp, professional voice answered alert and awake. Vance. Eleonora. It's Isadora Wolfe. There was a brief pause. Isadora. Is everything all right? Isadora looked out at the city lights, feeling utterly detached from them, from the life they represented. I need to retain your services, she said, her voice as cold and clear as the glass window in front of her. I see Eleonora, said, her tone shifting from concern to business. What's the situation? Isadora took a steadying breath. My husband came home with lipstick on his collar. I'm 7 months pregnant. I want to file for divorce. I'm invoking the infidelity clause in my prenuptial agreement. I want it filed tomorrow morning. No hesitation, no negotiation. I want this to be swift, brutal, and final." There was another silence on the line, this one filled with the weight of what Isadora was unleashing. The Wolf divorce wouldn't just be gossip. It would be a seismic event that would rattle boardrooms and shake the foundations of their social world. "Are you sure, Isadora?" Eleonora asked, her voice softening for a fraction of a second. "Once this process begins, it's a freight train. There's no stopping it." Isadora thought of the crimson stain, a silent testament to a secret life. She thought of the promises whispered to her pregnant belly, now rendered meaningless. She thought of her son, and the kind of mother she needed to be, not a victim, but a survivor. "I'm sure," she said, her voice devoid of any emotion. "Burn it all down." Callum woke to the unfamiliar silence of an empty bed. The space beside him was cool, the sheets undisturbed. He frowned, reaching out a hand as if to confirm her absence. Sunlight, harsh and unforgiving, streamed through a gap in the automated blackout curtains, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. It was 8:30 a.m. He'd overslept. "Isadora," he called out, his voice thick with sleep. Silence. He sat up, a dull throb beginning behind his eyes. The previous day had been a blur of hostile negotiations and veiled threats from Richard Sterling, the aging patriarch of Sterling Nash. The man was a dinosaur, but a dangerous one. Callum scrubbed a hand over his face, swinging his legs out of bed. He padded out of the bedroom, expecting to find Isadora in the kitchen, a green smoothie in hand, her face lit by the morning sun. The kitchen was empty. The entire penthouse was empty. A profound and unsettling stillness had fallen over the cavernous space. Even the air felt different, thinner, colder. On the gleaming marble of the kitchen island lay a single object, his platinum American Express card. Beside it was a small handwritten note on her elegant cream-colored stationery. "I won't be needing this anymore." His heart hammered against his ribs. This was wrong. All wrong. He strode through the apartment, his unease growing with every empty room. Her office, pristine. The nursery with its half-assembled crib and walls painted a soft, dreamy blue, achingly silent. He finally reached the walk-in closet. Her side was bare. It was as if she had been surgically removed from the life they had built. Dresses, shoes, jewelry, all gone. The only thing left was the faint, lingering scent of her perfume, a ghostly reminder of her presence. A cold dread colder than any boardroom battle seized him. He pulled out his phone to call her. The call went straight to voicemail. He tried again. Voicemail. He sent a text. "Isadora, where are you? What is this? Call me." No response. The message remained unread. He was blocked. He, Callum Wolfe, a man who could get the president on the line with a single call, was blocked by his own wife. Panic began to fray the edges of his legendary composure. He called his head of security, a former Mossad agent named Avi. "Find my wife, Callum," commanded his voice tight. "Track her phone. Find out where she is. Now!" Right away, "Mr. Wolfe, Avi," replied, his tone uncharacteristically hesitant. "But, sir, there's something else. A courier arrived an hour ago, from the law offices of Eleonora Vance." Callum froze. Eleonora Vance? The lioness. He knew the name well. He'd celebrated with a client who had been financially ruined by her. What was it? Callum asked, his voice dangerously low. "Legal documents, sir." "I didn't open them. They were addressed to you personally." Callum hung up and stormed to the foyer. The sleek envelope lay on the console table, her name stark and ominous in the corner. His hands trembled slightly as he tore it open. The legalese was dense, but the words leaped off the page sharp as knives. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Irreparable breakdown. Invocation of prenuptial agreement. Clause 17b. Infidelity. Infidelity. He stared at the word, his mind reeling. It made no sense. He'd been working. He'd come straight home. He hadn't been with anyone. This was insane. A mistake. A horrible, insane mistake. What proof could she possibly have? His phone rang, startling him. It was his sister, Cassandra. Callum, darling. She purred, her voice dripping with manufactured sympathy. I just saw the most dreadful thing on page 6. It must be a mistake. It says you and Isadora are... It's true. Callum bit out, pacing the length of his living room like a caged animal. She's left me. She's filed for divorce. She's accusing me of cheating. Cheating Cassandra's gasp was perfectly timed, perfectly pitched. But that's absurd. You've been working yourself to the bone. Who would even suggest such a thing? Oh, Callum, the poor dear, must be overwrought. The pregnancy, the hormones. It can make women so dreadfully irrational. She won't answer my calls. She's hired Eleonora Vance. Another perfectly executed pause. The lioness. Oh, good heavens, this is more serious than I thought. Don't worry, brother. I'm on my way over. We'll figure this out. This is clearly just a hysterical misunderstanding. As Callum hung up, his eyes scanned the room, searching for an answer. A clue to this madness. His gaze fell on the valet chair in the closet where he'd left his clothes the night before. His shirt was gone. He vaguely remembered Isadora being awake when he came in her form, a still lump under the duvet. Had she gone through his things? Then Avi called back. Sir, I've found her. She's checked into a suite at the Carlisle. A residential suite booked for an indefinite period. Paid for with a new credit card in her maiden name, Isadora Sterling. The Carlisle. Old money. Discreet. Impenetrable. She was making a statement. She wasn't just leaving him. She was erasing him. And Sir Avi continued, the doorman at your building. He said Mrs. Wolfe's assistant coordinated the removal of her belongings at 4 a.m. They were very quiet. He also said that just before she left, she handed him your shirt from last night in a sealed evidence bag, with instructions to give it to a courier from Ms. Vance's office this morning. The shirt. It all came back to the goddamn shirt. What was on it? Dirt. A coffee stain. He mentally retraced his steps from the previous day. The office. A brief, tense lunch with his legal team. The boardroom. He hadn't been anywhere near another woman. Then a sliver of memory returned. Last night, leaving the office exhausted and angry after a call with Sterling Nash's lawyers. He'd been shouldering his way through the lobby when a woman, one of the junior analysts he barely recognized, had stumbled, bumping into him. She'd apologized profusely, gathered her things and hurried off. It was nothing. A fleeting, insignificant moment. Could it have been that a transfer of perfume, a strand of hair? It seemed impossible. The doorbell chimed. It was Cassandra sweeping in, wearing a cloud of expensive perfume and a look of grave concern. She was beautiful with the same dark hair and piercing blue eyes as Callum, but where his were intense, hers were cool and calculating. She hugged him tightly. "Oh, you poor thing," she cooed, stroking his back. "Let me see those papers. We'll fight this." She's being ridiculous. As he handed her the divorce petition, she scanned it, her perfectly manicured finger stopping on clause 17b. Infidelity. She read aloud, her brow furrowing. She must have some kind of proof, Callum. Even a hormonal woman needs a catalyst. Think. Was there anything? Anyone? No, he roared, the sound echoing in the silent penthouse. Nothing. I was in the lobby. A girl bumped into me. That's it. It's nothing. Cassandra's eyes sharpened. A girl. Who? What did she look like? I don't know, young blonde, I think. An analyst. It was for a split second, Cass. It means nothing. Cassandra walked over to the vast window looking down at the city. A split second is all it takes, brother. A pretty young blonde. A tired, powerful man. It's a story as old as time. And a story Eleonora Vance will paint in very vivid colors for a judge. She turned to face him, her expression a mask of sisterly devotion. You need to find this girl. You need to get her to sign an affidavit. You need to control this narrative before it destroys you. The board will be spooked. The Sterling Nash deal is at a critical juncture. Your personal life is about to become a very public, very expensive liability. He knew she was right, but his mind wasn't on the board or the deal. It was on Isadora, on the empty space beside him in his bed, on the son he was about to lose before he even had a chance to hold him. I need to talk to her, he said, his voice raw. You can't, Cassandra said softly. She's put up a wall of lawyers. The only way to her now is through them. And for that, you need leverage. You need to disprove her accusation. She placed a cool hand on his arm. Don't worry, I'll help you. We're wolves. We don't just take a hit. We bite back. But as she spoke those words of loyalty, a tiny triumphant glint in her blue eyes went unnoticed by her distraught brother. The plan was working perfectly. The offices of Vance and Associates occupied the top 2 floors of a limestone building on Madison Avenue, a bastion of quiet, intimidating power. The decor was not opulent, but severe, all sharp angles, grey marble, and abstract art that seemed to judge you. It was a space designed to make even billionaires feel small. Isadora sat opposite Eleonora Vance, at a vast obsidian desk. Eleonora, in her late 50s, had iron-grey hair cut in a severe bob and wore a suit of military precision. Her eyes, the color of a stormy sea, missed nothing. The petition has been filed and delivered. Eleonora stated, her voice a low, steady hum. Callum Wolfe is officially on notice. The shirt is on its way to a forensic lab we use. We'll have a full analysis of the substance, including the brand chemical composition and likely batch number by the end of the day. Isadora nodded, her hands clasped tightly around a glass of water. She felt strangely disembodied, as if she were watching a movie of her own life. His reaction will be twofold. Eleonora continued, steepling her fingers. First, denial and attempts to contact you directly. He will plead, rationalize, and attempt to emotionally manipulate you. You have done well to block him. Maintain radio silence. All communication must go through me. Second, he will launch his own investigation. He will try to find the source of the lipstick. He will deploy the full, terrifying force of his resources to construct a counter-narrative. What if he claims it was an accident? Isadora asked, her voice barely a whisper. A smear on a collar is not an accident. It is an intimacy. Eleonora said, her gaze unflinching. In the eyes of the court, and more importantly in the context of your prenup, the burden of proof is on him to demonstrate its innocence. A very, very difficult task. As if on cue, Eleonora's assistant buzzed through on the intercom. "Miss Vance, I have Marcus Thorne on the line for you. From Wolf Corp. Marcus Thorne, Callum's chief counsel and right-hand man. The bulldog." Eleonora's lips curved into a semblance of a smile. "Right on schedule. Patch him through." She pressed the speakerphone button. "Eleonora, I trust you're having a good morning." Marcus's voice boomed, full of forced bonhomie. "It's proving to be quite profitable, Marcus," Eleonora replied dryly. "To what do I owe the pleasure? Let's cut the crap. This petition is a joke, and you know it. An absolute work of fiction. Callum is devastated. His wife, who is clearly not in a rational state of mind, has abandoned him based on a preposterous and insulting accusation. My client is perfectly rational." Eleonora countered, her voice like ice. "She has simply chosen to no longer tolerate disrespect. We have material evidence of Mr. Wolf's infidelity. The consequences of that, as stipulated in the document you're currently holding, are clear." "What evidence? A piece of lint. A misplaced smudge." Marcus scoffed. "A lipstick stain." "Marcus, on his collar. We are having it analyzed as we speak." There was a fractional pause on the other end. "This is ridiculous." It was a harmless bump in the lobby of his office building. Some junior employee stumbled. It was nothing. "We'll have a sworn affidavit from her on your desk in an hour." Isadora's stomach clenched. A junior employee. A clumsy girl. It was such a plausible, demeaning excuse. The kind of story that would make her look like the hysterical pregnant wife. But Eleonora was unfazed. An affidavit from an employee whose livelihood depends on your client's goodwill. Forgive me if I find that less than compelling. Send it over. My forensic team will enjoy comparing it to the data from the lab. I'm sure it will be illuminating." She glanced at Isadora, giving a subtle, reassuring nod. "You're playing with fire," Eleonora Marcus growled. "No, Marcus," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "I am the fire." She disconnected the call, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. "He is scrambling," Eleonora said to Isadora. "The junior employee story is weak. They know it. But it's the only play they have right now. They will try to find her and coerce her into signing a statement." A sudden sharp pain kicked beneath Isadora's ribs. The baby, her son. He was a part of Callum, a part of the man who had so casually broken her heart. For a dizzying moment, doubt clouded her resolve. Was she doing the right thing, tearing his world apart before he was even born? Was Cassandra right? Were hormones clouding her judgment? She looked at Eleonora, a woman who had seen hundreds of women in her exact position. Did I do the right thing? Eleonora leaned forward, her expression softening for the first time. You did the only thing you could do to protect your self-respect. Love and betrayal cannot coexist in the same house. A man who is careless with your heart will be careless with your child's. You are not destroying a family. You are refusing to build one on a foundation of lies. Now let's talk strategy. We need to freeze assets. We need to make it clear that the Wolf Empire is now a marital asset in dispute. Meanwhile, across town, Callum was a whirlwind of controlled fury. "Find her!" he yelled at his head of security. "I want the name of every woman who exited the lobby between 9 and 9:30 p.m. last night. Cross-reference it with our employee database. I want her name, her photo, her address." Now, Cassandra sat calmly on the sofa, sipping an espresso. Screaming at the staff won't help, brother. Think. What did she look like? I told you I barely saw her. Blonde, I think. Average height, wearing a dark coat. That describes half the women in this city. Cassandra sighed dramatically. This is going to be difficult. An hour later, Avi came back with a list. Security footage had been pulled. After cross-referencing badge swipes, they had a name, Sarah Jennings, a 24-year-old financial analyst who had been with the company for just over a year. A grainy security still showed a pretty blonde woman in a navy blue coat stumbling near the elevator bank, right next to Callum. That's her, Callum said, pointing. Get her. Bring her to my office. And get Marcus Thorne back here. 20 minutes later, Sarah Jennings stood trembling in Callum's penthouse. She was clearly terrified, her eyes wide with fear, as she looked at Callum Wolfe, his sister, and his chief counsel. Miss Jennings, Marcus, began his voice, deceptively gentle. We need your help to clear up a misunderstanding. You recall bumping into Mr. Wolfe in the lobby last night? Yes, sir, she stammered. I'm so sorry. I tripped. My heel caught on the rug. It's quite all right, Callum said, forcing a calm he didn't feel. Miss Jennings, did you by any chance? Kiss me. Sarah's face went pale. What? No. Of course not. I just stumbled. I was so embarrassed. And your lipstick, Cassandra interjected, her voice smooth as silk. What brand do you wear? I don't know. Revlon. I think it's called Cherry Tart. Cassandra shot a look at Callum. A cheap drugstore brand. Plausible. Miss Jennings, Marcus said, sliding a document across the coffee table. This is an affidavit. It states that you bumped into Mr. Wolfe accidentally, that there was no personal or intimate contact, and that any transfer of cosmetics was entirely incidental and unknown to both parties. We need you to sign it. Sarah looked at the document, then at the three powerful figures staring at her. Her eyes darted around the opulent room. She was a junior analyst. These people could crush her career with a single phone call. She hesitated. We would of course be very grateful for your cooperation, Sarah. Cassandra said, her voice laden with meaning. A promotion, perhaps. A transfer to the London office you've been hoping for. A significant bonus to compensate you for this inconvenience. The offer hung in the air, a mixture of bribe and threat. Sarah picked up the pen, her hand shaking. She signed. As she was escorted out, Marcus Thorne looked at Callum. This helps. It gives us a narrative. But it's her word against the stain. It all depends on what Eleonora's lab finds. Later that evening, the call came. Eleonora Vance's private number flashed on Isadora's phone. She was at the Carlisle, curled up in a window seat, overlooking Central Park, a cup of chamomile tea untouched beside her. Isadora Eleonora's voice was tense. I have the lab report. And Isadora asked, her heart pounding. The composition is unusual. It's a high-pigment, long-wear formula with a base of beeswax and jojoba oil. Very expensive. But the key is the fragrance note. It contains a rare absolute of grass jasmine and a synthetic molecule called ambroxan. What does that mean? It means, Eleonora said slowly, that the lipstick on Callum's shirt is not Revlon's Cherry Tart. It's not Chanel or Dior or Tom Ford. It's a custom blend. There's only one perfumer in New York who uses that specific jasmine absolute in his bespoke cosmetic creations. A man named Jean-Pierre Dubois. Isadora's blood ran cold. A custom blend. This wasn't an accidental smudge from a clumsy analyst. This was deliberate, planned. The story about the girl in the lobby. It's a lie, Isadora whispered. It's a complete fabrication designed to mislead us. Eleonora confirmed. Someone went to a great deal of trouble to create a specific lipstick and ensure it ended up on your husband's shirt. This is no longer a simple case of infidelity, Isadora. Eleonora paused, letting the weight of her next words sink in. This is a conspiracy. The revelation that the lipstick was a bespoke creation changed the entire landscape of the war. For Isadora, it was a terrifying pivot. The betrayal was no longer a simple, albeit painful act of passion by her husband. It was a cold, calculated plot. But who was the architect, and was Callum a participant or another pawn? The doubt, a venomous seed, began to sprout. Could he have been so foolish as to use a traceable custom lipstick in an affair? It seemed sloppy for a man whose life was a testament to meticulous planning. Her conversations with Eleonora took on a new urgency. We need to find out who commissioned that lipstick from Jean-Pierre Dubois. Eleonora stated, her voice sharp over the phone. He's notoriously discreet. His client list is a who's who of this city's elite. He won't talk without pressure. What kind of pressure? Isadora asked. The legal kind, Eleonora responded. I'm filing a subpoena for his records. He can either cooperate with us, or he can explain his actions to a judge. We'll see which he values more, his client's privacy or his own liberty. In Callum's camp, the signed affidavit from Sarah Jennings had brought a fleeting sense of relief, which was quickly obliterated by a call from Marcus Thorne. Eleonora's lab report came back. Marcus said, his voice grim. Callum could hear the strain. The lipstick isn't Revlon. It's some kind of one-of-a-kind bespoke blend. Callum felt the floor drop out from beneath him. What? That's impossible. The science says otherwise, Callum. Vance knows our story about the analyst is a lie. She's subpoenaing the perfumer who made it a guy named Dubois. We look like fools at best and conspirators at worst. We didn't just get caught in a lie. We got caught in a stupid one. Callum's mind was racing. The girl Sarah Jennings was a dead end, a pawn. The lipstick was the key. Someone had planted it on him. But who and why? The Sterling Nash takeover was the obvious answer. Richard Sterling was old-school dirty, creating a scandal to destabilize Wolf Corp's CEO during a hostile bid was exactly his kind of move. It's Sterling, Callum, said conviction hardening his voice. It has to be. He's trying to sink me. Find out who he knows, who he meets with. I want eyes on him, on his family, on his executives. Cassandra, who had been listening silently from across the room, stepped forward. Of course it's Richard Sterling, darling. He's a viper. This has his slimy fingerprints all over it. While you and Marcus focus on him, let me see what I can find out about this Jean-Pierre Dubois. A woman's touch might be more effective. I'll appeal to his artistic sensibilities, creator to creator. Callum nodded, grateful for his sister's proactive stance. Good. Do it. Find out who he made that lipstick for. Cassandra's visit to Jean-Pierre Dubois's exclusive appointment-only atelier in Soho was a masterful piece of theatre. The studio was a symphony of glass chrome and exotic scents. Dubois, a small, impeccably dressed man, with a flair for the dramatic, was initially resistant. My client's privacy is my most sacred vow, he declared, waving a delicate hand. Cassandra smiled, her charm weaponized. Monsieur Dubois, I am not here as a lawyer. I am here as a patron of the arts. Your work is legendary. But it is now at the center of a very ugly, very public legal battle. My brother Callum Wolfe is being framed, and your creation, your art is the weapon being used against him. She leaned in her voice, a confidential whisper. Eleonora Vance has already subpoenaed you. You know her reputation. She will drag your name and the names of all your clients through the mud. But if you were to say discreetly, help us identify the person who commissioned this specific crimson shade, we could make this whole unfortunate business disappear. My brother is a powerful man. His gratitude is a considerable asset. Dubois paled at the mention of the subpoena. His business thrived on discretion. A public legal battle would be ruinous. He looked at the beautiful, persuasive woman in front of him. He made a calculation. The blend you speak of, he said haltingly. Grass jasmine with ambroxan. I call it le baiser du diable, the devil's kiss. I have only made it for one client. And who is that? Cassandra asked, her heart thumping with feigned anticipation. It was commissioned 3 weeks ago. The client paid in cash. She did not give a name. Cassandra's face fell. No name, a description. Anything. She was formidable, Dubois recalled. Tall, elegant with dark hair, always wore sunglasses. Chanel. She had a voice that was low commanding. She said she wanted a lipstick that was unforgettable. A lipstick that could start a war. Cassandra left the atelier with a sense of triumph. The description was perfect, vague enough to point in any direction but specific enough to sound credible. She immediately called Callum. I have something, she said, her voice laced with excitement. Dubois said the client was a tall, dark-haired woman. Anonymous. Paid cash. He said she sounded commanding. She paused for effect. Callum. Who does that sound like to you? She didn't have to say the name. Callum's mind immediately went to Victoria Sterling, Richard's daughter and the CEO of Sterling Nash. She was tall, dark-haired, and famously aggressive in business. She was the public face of their takeover bid. Victoria Sterling. Callum breathed. It all fit. The motive, the means, the personality. It has to be her, Cassandra pushed. She gets close to you at some industry event, plants the lipstick, and her father launches the attack. It's brilliant. It's diabolical. It's them. The new theory took hold in Callum's mind, a welcome anchor in a sea of chaos. He now had a villain. He instructed Avi and Marcus to dig into Victoria Sterling's life, to find any connection to Dubois, any unusual cash withdrawals, anything. Meanwhile, Isadora was growing restless in her luxurious prison at the Carlisle. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a gnawing unease. The conspiracy angle troubled her. It felt too complex, too theatrical. She had known Callum for 5 years. He was arrogant, driven, and at times emotionally distant. But was he stupid? Was he the kind of man to be so easily framed? She trusted her own instincts more than anything, and her instincts were telling her that something was still missing from the puzzle. She decided to do her own quiet digging. She wasn't a corporate titan with a team of investigators, but she had her own resources. She had a deep understanding of the world they inhabited, the subtle currents of power and influence that flowed beneath the surface. She started with the lipstick itself. Le baiser du diable, the devil's kiss. The name was so dramatic, so obvious. It felt like something out of a pulp novel, not a sophisticated act of corporate espionage. She thought about Victoria Sterling. Isadora had met her a few times. Victoria was tough, yes, but also pragmatic and professional. Would she risk such a cheap theatrical stunt that could so easily backfire? Isadora's mind drifted to the person who had been by Callum's side through this whole ordeal. Cassandra. Sweet, supportive, ever-loyal Cassandra, the sister who had always treated Isadora with a cloying, almost suffocating affection, the woman who had been the first to suggest that Isadora was hormonal and irrational, the one who had conveniently offered to speak to the perfumer herself. A small, chilling memory surfaced. A few months ago, at a charity gala, Isadora had been admiring Cassandra's clutch. "It's a bespoke piece," Cassandra had said with a proud smile. "From an artisan in Soho. He does the most wonderful custom work. Perfumes, accessories, you name it. He's my little secret." Isadora's blood went cold. Soho. A custom artisan. Her little secret. The pieces began to click into place with a horrifying certainty. The vague description from Dubois, a tall, dark-haired, commanding woman. It could be Victoria Sterling. Or it could be Cassandra Wolfe. The cash payment. The anonymity. The perfect way to create a dead end. And the motive Isadora had seen the flash of jealousy in Cassandra's eyes whenever Callum showed her affection in public. She knew Cassandra had been resentful when Callum had promoted an outsider to be his COO instead of her. Cassandra wanted power. She wanted control of the Wolfe Empire. And Isadora and her unborn son, the new heir, were in her way. What better way to remove a rival than to make her husband look like a cheat, knowing Isadora's pride would never let her stay? Cassandra knew her. She knew exactly which button to push. It was a monstrous thought, so monstrous it had to be true. The simplest explanation was often the correct one. It wasn't a corporate rival. It was family. Isadora felt a surge of adrenaline. She couldn't tell Eleonora yet. This was a theory based on a half-remembered conversation. She needed proof. She needed to connect Cassandra directly to that lipstick. She thought about the creator Jean-Pierre Dubois. Cassandra had called him her artisan. There had to be a history there, a record that went beyond a single anonymous cash purchase. Isadora picked up her phone. She didn't call Eleonora. She called her own head of household staff, the discreet and loyal Mrs. Gable, who had been with Isadora's family for 30 years. Mrs. Gable Isadora said, her voice steady. "I need you to do something for me. It needs to be handled with the utmost discretion." "Of course, Ms. Sterling," the woman replied. "I need you to retrieve a specific item from the penthouse. In the back of my closet, there is a collection of gift boxes. I'm looking for a particular one from last Christmas. It's from Cassandra Wolfe. It should contain a small, custom-blended perfume bottle. Bring it to me at the Carlisle. Do not let anyone see you." An hour later, the box was in her hands. Inside, nestled on a bed of silk, was an elegant bottle of perfume. Tucked alongside it was a small embossed card. "Dearest Isadora, a little something from my favorite artisan to yours. May your year be filled with beautiful scents. All my love, Cass." On the back of the card, in elegant raised lettering, was the artisan's mark, Dubois. Création sur mesure, Soho. It was the connection, the proof. Not of the lipstick, but of the relationship. Cassandra hadn't just discovered Dubois. She was a long-time patron. Her claim of simply going to help her brother was a lie. Isadora's hands were steady as she photographed the card. She sent the picture to Eleonora Vance with a single line of text. "Forget Victoria Sterling. We've been looking at the wrong woman." Eleonora Vance stared at the picture of the Dubois business card sent from Cassandra Wolfe to Isadora. It wasn't a smoking gun, but it was a direct contradiction to the narrative Callum's team was building. Cassandra hadn't been a helpful stranger investigating a lead. She was a known patron of the artisan at the heart of the conspiracy. "This is excellent, Isadora Eleonora," said over the phone, a rare note of excitement in her voice. "It establishes a pattern of behavior and a pre-existing relationship. It proves she lied to Callum about how she found Dubois. Now we leverage it." Eleonora's next move was surgical. She didn't confront Callum's team with the new evidence. Instead, she filed a motion to depose Cassandra Wolfe, citing her as a material witness with undisclosed connections to a key figure in the case. The legal papers landed on Marcus Thorne's desk like a grenade. Callum was apoplectic. "Depose my sister." "On what grounds? She's been trying to help me." Apparently her help involved concealing her long-standing relationship with the man who created the lipstick, Callum Marcus said, rubbing his temples. "Vance knows. She sent a copy of a gift card Cassandra gave Isadora last Christmas, from the same artisan Dubois. Cassandra told us she was going in cold. She lied." The words hung in the air, thick and poisonous. Callum felt a disorienting wave of confusion. Why would Cassandra lie about something so trivial? "It doesn't make sense," Callum muttered, pacing his office at Wolfe Corp. "She's been my biggest supporter through all this." "Has she?" Marcus asked pointedly. "Or has she been pointing you squarely at Victoria Sterling, sending you on a wild goose chase while she covered her own tracks?" A cold dread began to seep into Callum's bones. He thought back. Cassandra had been the first to suggest Isadora was hormonal. She had been the one to zero in on the pretty young blonde in the lobby. She had masterfully extracted a vague description from Dubois that perfectly fit their chosen suspect. She had been directing the entire investigation from the wings. He felt sick. The deposition was scheduled to take place in a neutral conference room at Eleonora's firm. It was the legal equivalent of a gladiatorial arena. Isadora was advised not to attend to avoid emotional distress, but she insisted. She would not hide. She would face the woman who tried to ruin her life. She sat beside Eleonora, a silent, powerful presence, her pregnant belly a prominent symbol of everything at stake. Callum sat with Marcus, looking haggard and lost. Across the table, Cassandra looked immaculate in a sharp, tailored suit, her expression one of polite bewilderment, as if she were the victim of a terrible clerical error. Eleonora began her questioning, deceptively gentle. She established Cassandra's relationship with her brother, her position within the family, her knowledge of their marital life. Then she moved to the night of the incident. "Ms. Wolfe, Eleonora," said her voice even. "You offered to assist your brother in investigating the origins of the lipstick stain, correct?" "Yes." "My brother was in distress. I love him. I wanted to help," Cassandra said smoothly. "And in your desire to help you visited the atelier of Monsieur Jean-Pierre Dubois." "I did." "Was that the first time you had ever met or engaged the services of Monsieur Dubois?" Cassandra's eyes flickered for a nanosecond toward Callum. "Yes. I found his name through a simple online search for high-end perfumers in Soho. It was the critical lie." Eleonora paused, letting the silence stretch. She then produced a clear plastic sleeve containing the gift card. Mr. Wolf, can you identify this card? Cassandra stared at it, her composure finally cracking. A faint flush crept up her neck. It appears to be a card I sent to my sister-in-law. A card from your favorite artisan, Monsieur Dubois. Sent last Christmas, months before you claimed to have first discovered him online. Can you explain this discrepancy to the court? The air in the room was electric. Marcus Thorne put his head in his hands. Callum stared at his sister, his face a mask of dawning horror. I forgot. Cassandra stammered, her voice losing its silky quality. It was a small gift. It slipped my mind. You forgot? Eleonora repeated, her voice dripping with disbelief. You forgot about your favorite artisan when your brother's entire life was imploding over a product that could only have come from that very artisan. That seems unlikely. Eleonora pressed on, relentless. Let's talk about the description you obtained from Monsieur Dubois, a tall, dark-haired, commanding woman. A description you immediately used to point your brother toward his business rival Victoria Sterling. He said it was a woman who fit that description. Cassandra snapped, her composure shredding. Did he? Eleonora's eyes narrowed. Because we deposed Monsieur Dubois this morning, under oath. After being presented with evidence of your long-standing patronage, his memory suddenly became much clearer. He testified that you, Cassandra Wolf, visited him 3 weeks ago. He testified that you paid over $5,000 in cash to commission a lipstick you called Le Baiser du Diable. He even recalled you laughing and saying you wanted a color that could end a marriage. A collective gasp went through the room. It was over. The lie was completely exposed. Cassandra lunged to her feet, her face contorted with rage. He's lying. That little man is lying to save his own skin. So your testimony is that a respected artisan is perjuring himself. For what reason? Eleonora asked calmly. But Cassandra wasn't looking at Eleonora. Her furious, hate-filled gaze was locked on Isadora. You! She shrieked, pointing a trembling finger. This is all your fault. You came into our family and you took everything from me. You took my brother. You took my place. He was my family, and you made him weak. I saw the way he looked at you at your precious baby belly. He was going to give it all to you, to your son. The legacy, the name, the company. What about me? I'm a wolf. I deserved it more. The confession, raw and venomous, spilled into the sterile conference room. All pretense was gone. All that was left was the ugly, festering jealousy that had motivated the entire plot. Callum rose slowly from his chair, his face ashen. He looked at his sister as if seeing her for the first time. The woman he thought had been his staunchest ally was his greatest enemy. He hadn't been betrayed by a stranger or a rival. He had been betrayed by his own blood. He turned his head and looked at Isadora. Her expression was not triumphant. It was one of profound, weary sadness. He saw the pain in her eyes, the pain he had so arrogantly dismissed, and he finally understood its source. The lipstick wasn't about sex. It was about a calculated, intimate cruelty designed to destroy the one thing he had finally started to value more than his company, his family. He took a step toward her, his hand outstretched, his mouth open to speak, to apologize, to beg. But Isadora simply stood up, gave a slight, almost imperceptible shake of her head to Eleonora, and walked out of the room without a backward glance. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving Callum alone in the ruins of his life, with the echo of his sister's hate and the deafening silence of the wife he had already lost. The aftermath of Cassandra's confession was a cold, silent collapse. The deposition ended abruptly, and Cassandra, exposed and venomous, was escorted away, her name instantly becoming a byword for sordid family psychodrama. The Wolf Empire, once unassailable, was now just a fractured dynasty. Callum remained frozen in the conference room, suffocated by the weight of the betrayal. It wasn't just the frame-up, it was the chilling precision of his sister's attack. She had weaponized his flaws, his workaholism, his pride, his emotional distance. She knew Isadora's strength and self-respect would be the mechanism of the plan's success. Cassandra hadn't counted on Isadora's intelligence being sharper than her malice. In the week that followed, Callum moved with a brutal finality. Cassandra was stripped of her board seat, her funds, and her social standing. He surgically excised her from their world, not from anger, but from a cold necessity. Yet this purge did nothing to fill the void in his own life. The penthouse felt like a mausoleum, and the silent, half-assembled nursery was a monument to a future he had lost. He finally understood the lipstick wasn't about sex. It was about a calculated cruelty designed by his own blood. He sent handwritten letters to Isadora at the Carlisle pages of desperate apologies, not for cheating, but for his profound failure to protect their marriage. He didn't ask for forgiveness, only for a single conversation. The letters were returned unopened. Isadora, meanwhile, was building a fortress for herself and her son. She purchased a magnificent brownstone in the West Village, a warm, character-filled home that was the antithesis of the sterile penthouse. It was there, amidst the quiet work of creating a new life, that she processed the truth. Callum wasn't the simple villain she had first imagined, but he was a man who had allowed the circumstances for such a betrayal to flourish. The trust between them hadn't just been broken, it had been systematically dismantled. 2 months after the deposition, Callum appeared on her new doorstep. He looked older, stripped of his usual arrogance, his posture conveying a raw vulnerability. "Isadora," he said quietly, "I know I have no right. I just had to see you." She regarded him with a calm, steady gaze, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. "Why are you here, Callum?" "To apologize," he said, his eyes meeting hers, full of a truth she had never seen before. "Not for an affair, but for failing you. For failing us. I built an empire but couldn't protect my own home. I was so focused on the enemies outside I never saw the one inside. I let my pride blind me, and you paid the price." He glanced down, his voice cracking slightly. "I'm not asking you to come back. I lost that right. I'm just asking for a chance someday to be a father to our son." Isadora listened, feeling the steady kicks of the life within her. She saw a man finally confronting the ruins of his own making. The anger had faded, replaced by a quiet, weary sorrow. "The divorce is off," she said softly. A flicker of hope ignited in his eyes, which she quickly tempered. "But don't mistake that for forgiveness," she continued, her voice firm. "The fairy tale is dead, Callum. The trust is gone. If we are ever to be anything again, it cannot be what we were. It has to be something new, something honest, something built from the rubble." She stepped back, leaving the door open. It was not a promise of reconciliation, but the barest possibility of it. An invitation not to the life they had lost, but to the difficult, uncertain work of building a new one. Callum stepped inside, crossing the threshold into a fragile future. Their son would not be born into a perfect empire, but into a home where two people were learning that the most valuable assets are not listed on any stock exchange, and that love is not about perfection, but about the grueling, beautiful work of repair. We've just witnessed the gut-wrenching saga of Isadora and Callum Wolfe, a story that proves that even in a world of private jets and billion-dollar deals, the deepest wounds are inflicted by those closest to us. It wasn't just about a lipstick stain. It was about the chilling reality of betrayal, the strength it takes to burn down a life that no longer serves you, and the painful, complex path toward rebuilding. Their journey is far from over. Trust once shattered is the hardest currency to earn back. If you were on the edge of your seat, watching this high-stakes drama unfold, and if you believe in the power of a woman who knows her worth, then show your support. Don't forget to hit that like button, share this story with anyone who loves a gripping tale of love and betrayal, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more real-life dramas that you won't want to miss. Hit the notification bell so you're the first to know when our next story drops.